Hi, and welcome to Equilter's Quick Tips. I'm Dana, and I manage customer service here at Equilter. Our segment today is called Taming the Template. Our featured pattern this week is Dinosaur Adventure, and it's chock full of those fascinating creatures from long ago. We have 32 of them to fussy cut, and the template will help us do that. So let's explore some ways to make that easy. So we're going to start with this wonderfully cheerful fabric. We have lots of characters from which to pick. We need to select 32 of them. And again, we're going to use our template to outline the creatures for cutting them out. I have roughly produced several sheets of paper from the template that comes in our instructions this week. And just to be sure I have the creatures I want to use, I can place the paper template, temporary template, in a location and make sure he's taken care of. Then I can, let's do this little blue fellow here. I can set another one there. This isn't about cutting the dinosaurs out. It's about making sure I have 32 selected. We want to select ones that go in both directions. So let's grab this brontosaurus here too. And I will continue this process over the whole fabric until I have 32 fellows picked out. Now the shape we need to work with here is a diamond shape. It does not have any 90-degree angles. It's not our standard square. It's not a triangle. It's not a rectangle. So the template is going to make it much easier to cut out. I'm using the vinyl plastic sheets. It's fairly rigid. It's easy to work with. And let me show you how to cut your template. So this is our vinyl sheet. We have taken the template pattern from our instructions and taped it to the underside of the vinyl sheet. You can see how clearly it shows through. And what I'm going to do now is, using my ruler, I'm going to trace the cutting lines. These little dotted lines are the cutting line. This is the seam line. So the first thing we'll do, using a ruler, because this will ultimately be our guide, I'm going to trace on dotted line all the way around. Then you might have seen our marking for magic matching, where we indicated the importance of getting these exact spots located on our fabric. Well, the nice thing about a template is that we can use the template to find those zones rather than measuring at each corner. But the first thing I want to do is to mark where those corners are. And again, using my ruler so I can get them straight. We're going to mark just in the 4 corners. So I have marked my outer dotted line. That's the line I want to cut on. I've marked the 4 corners on the seam line, and you see the paper is still underneath on the underside. And now we're going to cut the template out. Another nice feature of this vinyl is that we can do that with a ruler and a rotary cutter. And to make sure I maintain those 1/4-inch seam allowances, I'm lining the 1/4-inch line on my ruler up with the seam line of the template. And then I don't have to press terribly hard, but I will cut through the vinyl to get I'll show you here in just a minute. Take your time, because after all, this is what's going to control those ferocious creatures. So you can see my template is beginning to take shape. Okay, so I have my template all marked and all cut out. You'll remember with marking for Matching Magic, we had to mark the corner on every single piece of fabric after it was cut. The beauty of working with this template is that once I punch a hole in each of the 4 corners, and I can use that as my marking guide as I cut out these pieces, so I'm not having to mark the corner in each piece. Now, to punch a hole, we can use a number of things. We can use a T-pin, we can use a push pin, we can use those needles from your machine that have done their job on fabric. We can use tapestry needles. I like to use the T-pin the best because I can see most clearly where that point is. I put the template on an old cardboard box so that the pin can go through and make a complete hole, and I don't have to worry about damaging my cutting surface. So it's really simple. You line the pin up with the hole, with the point of the corner. You push it through. I like to wobble it a little bit to get a nice pronounced hole, and then I bring the pin up, and I just need to do that at each of the 4 corners. So I've marked the template once, I've pushed the pin through at each corner, and I've got my corner marks for great matching. So our pattern instructions also have us cut triangles that will be sewn to the diamonds we're going to make. And we simply cross-cut rectangles to produce those triangles. I did find it very useful to create out of the same plastic a template that would fit on top of the rectangle so that I could mark the corners in each of the 128 triangles we have to produce. So we're all ready to cut out our first selected creature. As you can see, the pterodactyl shows very nicely through the vinyl that we're using for our template. The vinyl is not thick enough to use as a rotary cutter guide, so we are going to trace. And I'm simply going to trace all around the edge of the template that I've cut. And then we'll go in and mark the corners. And I'm using a sew-lined pencil for this marking. Fits in the hole nicely, and the mark shows very clearly. So we are lined, we are marked in our corners, and we're good to go. So I've removed my template. I'm using my ruler and my rotary cutter. I have marked in a couple of places what other dinosaurs I'm going to cut out, so I want to be careful not to invade their territory while I'm cutting. But it is simply a matter, like any other cutting, of using your ruler. Remember, we trace the cutting line for these. The seam line will be determined by the presser foot. And while we're cutting across a couple of fellows' faces here, they'll get their turn in another piece. And we have our diamond. Voila! So I wanted you to see just quickly how nicely the template works for marking the corners on our triangles. 3 spots, clear as a bell. Then when we're ready to stitch them together, they're wonderful reference points and they make the stitching very easy. Remember not to stitch over your pins. Remember, the hand dye is a little bit different in character than the quilting cotton, so the extra pins are very useful. And voila, with nice corners, nice marking, we have our first of 32 dinosaurs. And so we have tamed the template today on our dinosaur adventure pattern. It's a technique that can be used on many other patterns. We like it for this approach because we're cutting an odd shape. The diamond in our little block is a little bit more challenging to cut, and the template makes that possible. You must be sure to print that template at 100% scale as you're printing off your pattern. The marking in the corners give us a wonderful way to quickly mark each piece we're putting together for easy matching magic. We hope you've enjoyed Taming the Template, and we'll see you next time.